What's happening, guys? Kenny here again, and today I've got another hype versus reality video for you. And what that's going to be about is this guy. That's right, folks. This ginormous knife that's in front of you right here is the Spyderco Military. If you guys read the thumbnail, you know. And yes, this is in Rex45. This was a sprint run, and they are no longer available. But I'm going to go ahead and give you guys a hype versus reality on the military in general. But it is this example that I'll be talking about, and I'll also be talking about Rex45, just because it is on this example. But first things first, I do want to bring this guy in. Wham! This is my newest... gift from Kurt. This is pretty much my channel mascot here, so he'll be hanging out at the top there. And yes, this is the knife I'll be talking about today. And first things first, if you guys have never watched my hype versus reality, I'll be talking about the hype, which is the hype created either by the manufacturer or the distributor or the, or by even the designer of the knife. A lot of times the hype is created by YouTube channels, or even your hype. It could be personal hype. And I'll be talking about that. And first things first, when I do these hype versus reality videos, I go ahead and put the specs on the page. And in doing that, I try to save you guys a little bit of time. As you guys can see, this is a very large knife by the specs. And I'll go ahead and bring you guys back and then show you guys some size comparisons so you can really get an idea of how big this is. Actually, today I don't really have anything that's this big in front of me to show you. So we'll start with the Spyderco Manix 2, which is pretty much dwarfed by this knife. And then I'll go ahead and bring in the Shaman, which is also dwarfed by this knife. That is my custom Shaman that I made custom. This is the M4 version from Blade HQ. I'll go ahead and get those out of there, and then I'll bring in Benchmade Freak, also dwarfed by this knife. I probably should have brought in something maybe like a Cold Steel Recon just to get a better idea. But as you guys can see, this thing is extremely dwarfed by these, and I mean by the military. These are extremely... They are made to look very small compared. So, comparably, go ahead and bring in the SNG as well. You can see this is a much larger knife than even that, which is on the same size as about the PM2. And then I go ahead and bring in a Backlash, just a budget option. Give you guys an idea. We're talking a very large knife, guys. Very large. An inch and a half bigger than a lot of knives. So, in saying that, I'm going to go ahead and go right into the hype surrounding this knife. And the hype surrounding this knife is really just about, about its performance, as far as, like, it is a large knife that can get a lot of work done. This knife was originally made, from my understanding, to be more of a military-style knife. Obviously, the name insinuates that. But this was made by Sal and Eric. I'm not sure who designed this one, whether it was Sal or Eric, but I believe it was Sal designed it with his son in mind. If his son was a military guy, he made this knife to be that one knife that he would give his son if he was going into combat. So from my understanding, that's how why this knife was designed, and it definitely brought life and brought life to the PM2, the military, the paramilitary, and then of course the Para 3 came after that to kind of make a smaller version of the paramilitary. So the military kind of started it all, and this is where it all began. So it was really intriguing to me. I really wanted to try one to see where it all began, but I had heard so much negative hype as well on this knife. I'll get into that next, but The positive hype I had heard was it's just a super comfortable knife in hand. It's also very large blade, so you get a lot of work done. And even though the handle is it's almost like out of proportion where the handle is much larger than the blade, it makes it a very comfortable knife and very easy to use in the handle. I mean, in the size and ergonomics of it. And then in saying that, the negative hype that also surround this knife was the fact that it was a liner lock, whereas all the other militaries are compression locks. So a lot of people want that to change. Also, it's a tip down only configuration, and it's only right-handed tip down. Well, I mean, that's relative, because if you were left-handed putting it in your pocket like this, the blade would be going into your pocket anyway. So if you were going in your front pocket, that actually would be okay, but then in deployment you'd have to flip the knife. Doesn't make a lot of sense. So technically right hand carry, you pull it out, it's right there to use. For me, it's right hand back pocket carry because of the size of it and being tipped down. And when you put this in your back pocket, it would be into the pocket. So yeah, so that's a negative hype, was everyone was saying, oh, it's tip down only, and for a lot of guys that's a negative. Not talking personal preference here right now. In saying that, another negative hype thing would be just the large size and the fact that you're not getting a whole lot of blade for as big as the handle is. That could be some negative hype surrounding this. And then again, that liner lock. But in saying that, the negative hype, there was a lot of negative hype surrounding this, almost as much as the positive hype, for me at least. So, saying that, the reality when I got this thing out of box, if you guys saw my first impressions and unboxing, you'll know that I was blown away by the size of this knife, guys. I was not necessarily expecting this. The police I had already gotten, and the police is also one of those ones where I was kind of blown away. That would have been right here with this as far as size, but I don't have that knife with me right now. It is in the possession of Steve over at Super Steel Steve channel. So this knife was huge, guys. It was very big when I first got it out, and this is the first thing that kind of smacked me in the face. But after that, as I, pretty much looked at the fit and finish, this is exactly what you would expect as far as fit and finish is concerned. The G10 is done very nicely. I do like this burnt orange color much better than, for instance, this orange. It's a much subtler orange. It's not like that safety orange that we mostly see. This burnt orange has an awesome, subtle look to it, and I really, really do enjoy this orange personally, on a more subjective level. And then, it has a nice big, the tube, the lanyard tube's nice and big, which I don't really use lanyards, but for those of you guys that do, that's nice. It has great fit, guys, as far as the way everything fits together. It is done very nicely. This is brass washers, phosphor bronze washers, and they are fit in there nice and tight. Although that's a little thin on the washers. I did not take this knife apart. Really no need to, with it being phosphor bronze washers. This does have 3 standoffs here. This actually acts as the stop pin as well. These 2 standoffs and then the lanyard tube. Really, it's mostly relying on these 2 standoffs is what it's relying on for strength. This is a stop pin that's shouldered. There are no screws, as you guys can see. That is just a shouldered stop pin. And really thick, beefy pivot on this guy as well. And it does have, from my understanding, it is a bushing pivot. So these are both screwed into a pivot that is locked in by a D fitting, most likely. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong there. Like I said, I did not take this knife apart. As you guys can see, I have right around 30 to 40% lockup there, and it's very sturdy. Very nicely done as far as that lockup's concerned, and a very thick steel bar that's inserted. This does not go all the way through the liners. This is just a partial liner here, guys, that acts as your liner lock. Very nicely done. that liner is connected to these 2 screws. As you can probably see there, sorry if you can't, you see that? That's actually the liner that also makes the liner lock. It is connected by these 2 screws to hold it firmly in place. So that's very nicely done. When I first got this knife, it was very stiff as far as the action's concerned. I would disengage, it wouldn't fall free. I'd have to swing it down to my thumb and then push it in. But it was easily one-handable, but I had to swing it down. It was fairly stiff. But when I deployed it, it did deploy very nicely. So that was a nice thing. And as far as it is now, you guys can see, just dropping down very nicely as soon as I disengage the lock bar. And that is with perfect lockup, guys. Really no play to even speak of. Either way, there is a slight bit of rock there, but as soon as I did that, it just locked up. So now there's absolutely no play. So really nice. No stick, guys, at all. Really absolutely no stick, which is what we would expect from steel on steel there. But very nicely done in that concern. I do have perfect centering. And as far as the finish here, guys, you see how well that's contoured on the edge? That chamfering is on another level, even from a PM2, guys. You can see how much more that's chamfered. And it actually attributes to a much more comfortable, very comfortable back of the knife. So that's actually a really nice touch, even comparably to the PM2 or the Para 3. Para 3 even has more contouring than the PM2, which does not make sense to me, guys. Why is this not contoured more? Why is that not rounded more on the PM2? That's a whole nother issue to talk about, but I do not know why they don't contour these PM2s more. Would make a much more comfortable knife, guys. Please, Spyderco. In your CQI, please contour these more. I'm probably going to do this one myself. I'm probably going to do all my PM2s myself. But if I decide I'm going to keep them all, which right now I think I will. So yeah, saying that, really beautifully done as far as the finish goes on these. Nicely done. And I really did enjoy this knife right out of the box. In saying that, let me go ahead and put some footage of me using the knife up here now. Guys, wow. I did like the knife right off the bat, just looking at it, but it was huge, and I'm thinking, like, when am I going to use this knife? In saying that, I then took it to work and used it. Holy crap, guys. I know why this knife is made the way it is, and I am so happy they did it the way it is done, because it cut through cardboard however thick I wanted to go, however whatever I wanted to do. I mean, it just cuts like a beast, guys. Amazing as far as performance is concerned. It's not the thinnest thing behind the edge, as I'll show you when I come back from all this. It's not the thinnest knife by any means, but because of the handle, because of the way it's ground with the full flat grind, the distal tapering going to the tip, just the way it's done overall, it just slices amazingly. And I never felt like the stock thickness was holding me back. I put this thing at about 17 degrees, but I think it was about there. I think I pretty much followed the factory secondary, but it just sliced like a beast, guys. With my edge on it, it was just even better, and it just did amazingly, guys. And everything I did with this knife, it surpassed my expectations. It was exceeding my expectations at every turn, and I absolutely love using this knife, and it is not going anywhere, guys. The Rex45, for those of you that don't know about Rex45, it's pretty much the same composition as M4, or probably even closer to HAP 40, which means that it is a tool steel, guys. It does have a pretty high carbon count comparably to other steels like S30 and stuff like that. It does have a high carbon count with a high vanadium count at about 3%, which M4 is about 4%. But it makes up for all of that with cobalt, guys. It has about 8% cobalt. Excuse me. And what that means is that it's pretty much M4 that can be taken to a much higher HRC, guys. So most M4, you're looking at about between 62 and 64 HRC to get it to its optimal performance as far as cutting ability. Obviously, if you were looking at more of a toughness as far as prying and stuff like that, we'd look more at like a 58 to 59, maybe 59 to 60 HRC to optimize that. But as far as performance, cutting cardboard, paper, like anything you're going to be cutting as far as a knife is concerned, at 62 to 64, we're looking at an optimal hardness for M4. Whereas Rex45, we can go all the way up into that 66 to 68 HRC, which is wow, guys. At 66 HRC, we're looking at probably a much better performing steel than even M4. In saying that, this example was found to be 66.3, I believe, and 66.4 on the second hit on the HRC tester. And wow, guys, it performed amazingly. As you guys probably already know, Super Steel Steve has a Rex45 military as well. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Kurt has a Rex45 military as well. And that one was found to be 67. And I think we do have one more that was another example that was found to be 67.8, I believe. That was not Kurt's testing, but another YouTube channel's testing. And, dude, I mean, 3 examples within 1 point of Rockwell HRC. And really amazing, guys. The performance of this knife at 63.4, it's out of this world, guys. I was really impressed with this Rex45, and I actually absolutely love Rex45 more than M4 at this point, which is a lot to say because I love M4 and it's one of my favorite steels to use. Just a great performing steel, and for Rex45 to be even better, it's just outstanding, guys. Outstanding steel. And at that HRC, it'll probably even perform better than M4 in a stability test as far as edge stability. I will probably be doing this versus M4 in a toughness test coming up eventually, hopefully. I really want to do that. I'm just trying to find the time to get some toughness tests done, guys. That does eat up a lot of time, especially in editing and everything. So trying to find the time to do it. Saying that, you guys will see here in the using section, I did, in fact, use this knife to baton, guys. First off, I want to preface this with saying I am not a survivalist. I'm not someone that goes camping very often or anything like that. I wish I could go camping more, guys. I wish I'd grown up with a dad that took me camping all the time, but I did not. I went camping with my buddies. That's how I would go, and we just do whatever we had to camp. That was it. But in saying that, I'm not a survivalist, as I said, and I know you guys are going to give me crap. I'm not doing this properly, probably, and I have flip-flops on and all that, so I'm just going to preface it with, yeah, give me shit, guys. I know. I'm not a survivalist. So in saying that, I did baton with this knife, and it performed amazingly, guys. I did release the lock bar because we're not testing the lock bar strength here. We're not testing the pivot strength. We're trying to test the steel with this batoning. And I did use, obviously, I used wood to baton through, to baton the spine with. This steel performed out of this world, guys. I batoned it with no regard for the strength of the steel. I just went to town. It took me a while, but I did get through it. Just because of the size of the blade, it was hard to baton at some points to try and get through that relatively thick log there. And it was just excellent, guys. I have no complaints at all trying to baton this through. And after I was done, I did go ahead and test the lock strength and everything, because I did start batoning with it locked up when I first started, and then immediately I was like, oh wait, what am I gonna do? I'm gonna destroy this thing. So I released the lock bar. But that little bit of batoning I did with the lock engaged did not affect it at all. I didn't notice any difference in the lockup. In fact, what you'll see is it was actually smoother after I did the batoning. So the knife became smoother, the lockup was still solid, but it drops free, and it's just amazing. After all that, it really did perform amazingly. And I don't remember if I showed it at the end of this video, but even after all this batoning and all the use I put on this knife before the batoning, it was still paper cutting. And actually, it was even hair shaving slightly, even though it wasn't hair popping or anything, and it was more of a scrape shave, it still was hair shaving after all of this. And that's just amazing, guys. I will bring you guys back here, and I'll show you. I did even more cutting with this today, guys, and I did not strop it. That's awesome. It's really next level stuff, guys. Let's see. Yeah, so it's not hair shaving anymore. I mean, I did a lot of cutting with this, guys. The fact that it's not hair shaving is actually a relief a little bit, because if it was, I'd just be like, man, this steel's got everything. It's got it all. And it really does. The only thing I would say in a negative way on this steel, for those of you guys that are worried about corrosion and don't like to take care of your knives, if you just like to leave it be, this steel will corrode. This does not have a lot of chromium in it. It has about 4%, which just like M4 means that it mostly helps with the stabilizing the steel. And because of all the vanadium and stuff in here, the chromium is free to do some corrosion protection. So it's not going to be as susceptible to corrosion as something like 1095 per se, but it will corrode if you don't take care of it. You guys can see there the 2 points where this was Rockwell tested, and it came up very nicely, as I said. You guys can see here, this thing dropped free after all that work, amazingly. Perfect lockup. Oh, just beautiful, guys. Absolutely love this knife. And for those of you guys that don't know, my hand is 3 3/4 inches across, 4 inches tall, and from this point to this point is 6 1/4 inches from the tip to the knuckle. And you guys can see how this knife fills my hand. Yeah, guys, ergonomics on this knife are outstanding. Choking up is very comfortable. I know for the most part, guys, you look at a lot of my knives. I mean, every knife on this table right now is tip down. I mean, is tip up, guys, sorry. Every knife on this table is tip up. I do not do tip down for the most part. But in saying that, sorry, I know this is kind of a waste of a demonstration here. You guys know most of my knives are tip down. I mean tip up. I'm sorry, Jesus. Most of my knives are tip up. But in saying that, this knife, guys, the way they did this clip, it's outstanding as a tip down knife. It is so comfortable. Most of the time, the ergonomics just don't work with tip down. The way they did this knife and this clip, I don't know what it is, but man, that clip just disappears in my hand. It fits perfectly right in the fold. And whether I'm choked up or back here, this clip actually improves the ergonomics in a sense. It fills your hand nicely with that swell there. It just, oh man, this knife is so comfortable in hand, and the ramp is in the perfect spot. See that? It just works so well, guys, just so well. And with a knife this large, I use it in my back pocket. I do not carry this in my front pocket. In saying that, this goes in my back pocket right up against the seam. so it's not going to open in my pocket since it's right up against, and this has very, very good detent. I can't even shake it out. So, yeah, that's not going to open in my pocket. It's in the back pocket. When I pull this knife out, it is ready to deploy. This is something that Vinny over at Nero Knives, Clint at Alchemy One talks about this too. If this clip was on this side and you pull this knife out, you have to climb up the knife in order to deploy it. With a knife this large, having the clip at the top is actually advantageous, because when you pull this knife out, all you have to do is slide and deploy. Because of the clip being, because of it being tipped down. You pull this knife out, you're ready to deploy. If this was tipped down, if this was tip up, you would have to climb up the knife in order to get to it to deploy. With something this size, with like the Para 3, you pull it out, you're ready to go. As soon as you start getting into this size knife, you really are, it's more advantageous to have it tipped down at that point, because where you pull it out, you're going to be closer to your deployment. So, this is the way it needs to be, guys. I know a lot of guys still complain about it, but honestly, I think this is the way it's supposed to be, and I wouldn't change a thing about it. I really love the way it is. So, just awesome, guys. And actually carrying this knife is on another level from what you would expect. I will go ahead and bring the calipers in right now before I go into the carry. Just quickly, I want to go ahead and show you how thick behind the edge this is. Because it's not super thin, guys. At 17 degrees, you can see that bevel's relatively wide. 25 at the heel. $24. Like I said, guys, this is not a very thin 21. So 21 at the thinnest point here. 21. I might be able to get it even. Yeah, it is 25 back there. Okay, so 22 at the tip. It actually gets a little thinner there. All right, so 25. So it does thicken up back at the tip. 25 at the tip. So yeah, it gets thinner here through the belly. And I noticed that when I was cutting it, it does seem to want to really slice through this section of the blade. But because of this distal tapering, guys, this is a very thick stock as far as like comparatively. Looking at about 0.144, which, yeah, 3.4 millimeters. So it's relatively thicker stock. But yeah, it just slices excellently because of the way it tapers and everything. Actually, and comparatively, another knife that's got a relatively similar behind the edge thickness, this knife, I did kind of comparisons between these two. And this knife, even though back here it's like 20 thousandths behind the edge, maybe 21, out here it's almost 25. I think 26 at one point. And these are very similar as far as behind the edge thickness, but I found that this does not slice as well when I'm going through like thicker cardboard and stuff like that. I find that this actually slices much better because of that distal tapering and everything. The way that this is ground slices beyond its BTE thickness capability, like what you would expect from it, which is really nice, guys. I was really impressed with the way this knife slices, even though it's very thick. So this is a really good, just workman's all-around knife. And I really would suggest it to anyone who's looking for a very large, like, get-it-done type of knife. This is not going to be like, you know, a subtle EDC, guys. This is when everyone knows you got a knife, you don't care, and you just want to get work done in a comfortable way, guys. This knife is one of the most comfortable knives I've ever used, really. It's just beautifully done, and there's really no jimping to speak of except for right here, which is super aggressive, but it's not. It's aggressive enough to like take some fingernail, but not enough to like even notice it when I'm cutting. And then this jimping is done like your normal Spyderco jimping, and it's done very well. But on that ramp, you just don't notice it. It's not gonna like dig in or anything, but it's just really well done. I just did not notice any hot spots on this knife at all, and just very comfortable. Even compared to like this knife, I was doing comparison, like I said, between the two. Noticed more hot spots on this guy. I did notice more hot spots on some other knives that I'm not going to talk about when I was comparing, and this is just awesome. Really, really beautifully done, guys. And then when we talk about the carry on a knife that's that big, you're talking this giant knife. Look at how much this weighs. 4.28 ounces, guys. What? This just surpasses anything you could ever expect. It carries like a dream, yet performs like a nightmare, guys. This is just unbelievable. Really just amazingly done as far as packing in all you can in a, in the largest size, but getting your weight at a reasonable level. And then, I mean, you're talking sorry guys, let me put it there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.5 inches. 9.5 inches of knife there, guys. You guys probably saw that in the description, or yeah, when I put that on the page. But yeah, what a knife, guys, and beautifully done. And I would suggest this to anyone, really, guys. Anyone, as long as your hands aren't tiny, or you're in a place where this would be illegal because of the blade length. You are looking at a 4-inch blade. So yeah, if that's like outside of what you can carry, then obviously I wouldn't suggest this. But otherwise, this is just a beautifully done knife, guys. And I really didn't expect to love it like I do, but I absolutely love this knife. And yeah, that's pretty much the gist of it, guys. Hope you enjoyed this video. Yeah, and I look forward to giving you guys some more. All right, have a great day, and see you next time.